you can imagine it. It was like plywood walls, and there was blood splatters on the walls. It was like, oh my god, I didn't know that they had pubs like that anymore.
That is awesome.
Yep, that certainly sounds like. Well, there's various places I've been in Australia that are like that. I'm just trying to actually get to our stream.
I believe the plan was the bouncers would push you in there if there was any argy-bargy and just shut the door, and once it quietened down, someone had won. It's a quick way to sort fights out.
Alright. So, hello everybody. I'm Brook Waters. This is Margaret and Lincoln. We're from Stickmen Media. We are, as usual, streaming the development of our game After the Light, our zombie survival horror game. And today we've got Lincoln on here to tell us a bit about designing one of the deep cave levels that we're actually doing. So this one's a real challenge, at least in virtual reality, being very deep. So
which screen are we watching? I always forget. It's that one. That's the real time one.
So that's your movie actually playing at 4 times speed.
Okay, so I guess to summarise what's happening here is the level that I was working on is I guess you call it a chasm. It's a vertical shaft, and you're kind of playing your way down it. And the first third of the chasm is sort of around walkways, and I wanted to get to a point where you come out to the platform, because just having walkways spiralling down this chasm would be interesting for about a third of it, and then you'd probably start to lose interest. So the idea was you get down to a platform and then a different game mode starts. So maybe you get into a platform or a cart or something that lowers you down, and then you could have a gameplay where you're sitting in the cart picking off zombies with a gun. So what's on the screen at the moment is I found a free asset of it's a very high res. I think someone had done what do they call it, photogrammetry, where they take high res photography of an actual real world item. So that's photogrammatically made of a.
I don't know what the word is, but
how to pronounce it. It's actually a cart in a museum, so it's a real item, just photographed and modelled. So I'm currently there. I was just chopping it up and getting rid of the wheels and seeing if at the very least for test purposes, it may be that this asset never ends up in the game, but we just want to test the theory. Okay, can we have this gameplay where you're being lowered down on a chain or a rope or something? So phase 1 is get an asset in there and then set up some viewer positions. And I think what I've done here is I've forgotten to turn my brightness up, so it may be a little bit dark. Normally when I know I'm recording, I'll turn the brightness up.
No, you've turned it up.
It is up?
It's up.
Oh, there we go. It's up now. So this is the chasm. So you can see there's the little walkways, the zombies getting shot off the edge. And you can see a little bit of moonbeams going down the middle of the shaft.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason I turned the brightness off again. But just to get the idea of, okay, gameplay wise, you get down those stairs and then you need to get into this cart. So that was kind of my mission on this hour or so that I was recording was, okay,
get fucking terrifying when they're going that speed.
Yeah, get this asset in place and see how it will work gameplay wise.
Okay.
So you'll probably see me start to fiddle around with where the asset you can go.
Turn the lights back on there for a while.
Yeah. And you're probably, right now I'm probably creating some folders to import the asset to in the content directory. And
so you were mentioning before there might actually be some long spots in this video where nothing much happens because you left it running while you went to lunch.
Yeah. So if it pauses, it might be that I'm either talking to someone else in the room or gone to lunch.
So there seemed to be a skeleton at the bottom of that.
I added that later. So the bear asset, this is, if I can remember the name of the person that uploaded it, but obviously I checked out licensing and the person who created it said it's more than welcome for anyone to use it for any purpose. So key point there is make sure you don't just grab assets that aren't license free.
Yeah.
In this case, that one he was happy for people to use it. So. Sorry, what was the question before that? I got off track.
So I was saying there was a skull at the bottom of the thing.
Yeah.
When
So
I
got that asset, and then you'll probably see me through these bits of video here. Not sure what I'm doing there. I think someone was talking to me at my desk, and I had to show them some stuff, so I got distracted.
Oh, the beef eater! I remember him.
Yeah.
We're not using the beef eater. It was an idea too squeamish making even for me.
So yeah, once I get the asset in there, eventually I play around with because it's effectively two meshes. There's the main mesh is the container, and then there's another mesh that is the rocks on the bottom.
Yeah. Are we retopologizing that container so it takes up less polys? Do we need to?
Probably can do.
Yeah. It seemed pretty rich in.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing later we will either scrap this asset and use maybe a flat platform, which is kind of what we were discussing earlier. The idea behind this one that I kind of liked is for someone who's got like mild vertigo, maybe they'll find the level a bit more playable if they can stand in something where they feel like it's around them, and you almost feel like you can hold the edges of the container. A small platform might be a bit scary, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's just a flat wooden raft type thing that you stand on.
Whatever happens, it's the original idea that zombies can actually jump at you while you're going down there.
So at the moment you'll see I'm just testing it, but I'm positioning we'll call it the platform, the cart, and I need to look at when you raise it and lower it into the shaft, where does it end up? I.e., if I vertically drop it down the shaft, does the platform end up going through a wall mesh or something crazy like that?
Yeah.
So positioning was quite fiddly. Eventually, right now I'm playing around with it, trying to get it in the centre of the shaft, rotating it, looking at it from above, and shortly you'll probably see me just grab the uppy downy, the Z-axis arrow, and just sort of slide it down the hole and just see.
The y-axis?
Yeah, X, Y, it should be Z.
Yeah, Z goes into the thing. X.
Oh, actually, sorry, right, that's the y-axis.
Yeah.
So you probably see I'm taking breaks where I'm just dropping zombies, so it's hard to resist.
Having a bit of fun there.
Yeah.
It's
so here we
a
go.
good sign that it's fun just to do that, even before we've got the rest of the gameplay in.
And you'll see I drop it all the way to the bottom of the chasm, which there is a ground there. It's just that the fog makes it look a little bit deeper than it is. And looking at positioning, it's like very near the back of the cave. I kind of want it forward a bit. So it's all just about positioning and thinking about gameplay. Obviously, when you get to the end of the level, you don't want to be against the back wall of the cave, because maybe there's another level that starts after that where you're trying to get out of the cart platform and move to another cave system or something.
Yeah.
A bit fiddly, I found it, to get it in the right spot. And then eventually I will start, once I'm happy with the position, start tweaking with the rocks in the bottom of it and so on.
Back to your desktop.
Back to the desktop image. And, oh no, still going. And that's in
yeah, you can see it's fairly high poly for what it is.
I think I realised that I'd forgotten to get some kind of rocks to put in the bottom of it, so I went back to the original model and found the rock geometry and exported those out. And then probably added on top of that some skeletons and so on. I guess it's a shortcut way of getting an asset in there to test the idea with, because if I could have sat down and tried to model a cart or something like that, but I probably would have wasted, or at my slow speed of modelling, I would have been there for half a day trying to make a cart and make it look pretty.
Yeah. No, smart move. Even if we end up replacing it, it's a good placeholder.
Yeah. And the tricky thing about this particular level is it's originally we didn't envisage that we would be putting any kind of vertical movement into the game.
Yeah.
Just because I remember you saying earlier on it might be a bit off-putting. the whole verticality that of looking up and down, but actually it's turned out that it's actually quite fun in the game to have.
Verticality, that's a word.
Verticality.
That's a super word.
I guess the whole idea is to try and play on people's vertigo.
Essentially you want to be just tightening the strings of tension wherever you can to and then go for those moments of relief, like when you win the battle or you have the...
And I guess if from an environment artist point of view, it's literally is about that you're using whatever tools are at your disposal to try and make the game experience interesting. If that means cranking the lighting way down so it's quite dark and moody and adding some mist, or maybe that scene hasn't got any mist but it's got spotlights or pools of light that are in the room's actually darker, and try and think about gameplay in terms of if the zombies are coming out of the dark at you. Or I think one level we're going to have a very dark cave, but you're in a pool of light in the centre of it, and you don't really see the zombies coming at you until the last maybe 2 seconds. So you literally be spinning on a dime going like this, listening. Audio will be probably big on that level, trying to hear footsteps coming at you out of the dark.
Yeah, that being in a pool of light, being kind of isolated in light with dark around you, that's a nasty sensation, isn't it?
Yeah.
We were doing that on an island off Denmark and walking back to my house in the middle of the night, and all with reeds blowing and wind and the trees and all very dark and mysterious, and one light in the middle of the island, and feeling like I didn't really want to approach it.
Oh, you can see here, what am I doing? Obviously I've got the rock texture in for the bottom of the cart. I created a cube, I can't remember why I did that. It will become obvious in a minute. So that's kind of what the texture should look like inside the game. Again, like it's probably a bit high poly.
That was a really tightly packed texture map that we saw there earlier. Presumably that was the texture map for the
for that asset.
That asset.
I think we talked while it was happening, but in the background I was reconnecting the materials. When you import stuff into Unreal, one thing that happens a lot is the assets might lose their connection. Like you bring the asset in, you open it, and you open the material, and things don't quite look right. And quite often it's just as simple as having to open the material and inside the material editor actually reconnecting the textures and the normal maps and those kind of things. So that's what those files at the bottom of the screen there are, the materials. Yeah, I think we're getting to the point where I'd kind of locked in a position that I was vaguely happy with.
Okay.
And then
You say vaguely happy.
Well, until you actually, the acid test is to stick a player start inside that container or that cart and see how it actually looks in gameplay. Until you stick the headset goggles on and actually play the level, you don't quite know whether it will feel great in game.
Yeah.
So yeah, there I am trying to add some chains. I think I played around with ropes for a while and then chains. And
we need to have an endless run of chain really, because that's a deep shaft.
For now, I just added a couple. You can see I'm trying to add a couple of sections of chain. In the end, I think I realised that until we're sure that the asset's going to get used, I'll just add a couple of little bits of chain, even if they're just floating in free space, just so when you're on the platform you can kind of get the feeling of, okay, I'm hanging by chain,
Yeah. Maybe it should sway backwards and forwards.
Yeah. The one thing I thought of with if we do end up using something like that asset in the final game is that it could be, because it's on 2 pivot points, it could be swaying this way. Like as you're standing in it, it could actually sway slightly with your body, but I don't know the connecting that up with the body motion in VR, it might be a bit off-putting, but that could be a good thing. Like as you lean over and look down, the whole cart could start.
That would be amazing.
Oh,
Give you the
yeah.
sensation that you're going to tip out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine it?
I can see that. We
Definitely.
might have to actually set up modes where people can actually select whether they have the full terrifying experience or
Just have a
moderate it a little bit,
or just
and then things like that.
choose
will
your
just-
vertigo factor.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm a crybaby or extremely brave.
Yeah. I think probably if you buy a game with zombies and caves and
Yeah.
shooting in, it's probably because you really quite like the idea of zombies and caves.
Yeah.
And there's a lot you could do with this. I mean, you could have left the wheels on, and as you got to the bottom of the shaft, the cart got dropped onto some kind of rail system. But then, like I was saying the other day, it starts to
Yeah. We don't want no
almost
motion.
feel a bit
Indiana
Tomb
Jones.
Raider and that, Indiana Jones, a little bit that direction.
Yeah.
If this asset is the one that's used by the end, obviously it kind of needs to feel like it. One thing I'm always aware of is it needs to feel like it's part of a catacomb. So I mean,
Yeah.
why is there this
Why is
platform
there a
in
thing
there? In the end, I think we'll probably put some coffins and stuff on that ledge, so it's like their way of getting stuff down to the lower catacombs is lowering it down. It's, yeah, like a dumbwaiter.
Corpse waiter.
But maybe that container is even bigger, twice the size, and it's got a couple of coffins standing up at one end or something to make it obvious. Or maybe it is just a flat platform. So there's a lot of stuff to experiment with there.
Okay, so here that's as you're placing the stones in the
Yeah,
bottom.
dropping the stones in the bottom, and then I think I throw some skeletons and bones and things on the bottom just to dirty it up.
Yeah, they should be wriggling.
Really.
What do you reckon? A few bones on the bottom, still trying to get out and cause havoc.
I think I had some slight issues with there was like a little air gap at one end of these rocks where you could see straight through to the ground, which was a bit off-putting when you're supposedly standing on a slab of stone.
Could put a black plane underneath, I guess.
And I think you can see now that that's my first time actually standing in the platform.
Do you know a little rust hole or something like that where you could see through? That'd be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
though, wouldn't it?
Gameplay ideas I had while I was making this there's a lot of ways you could do it. You could have a chain that's hanging there that you have to kind of do this kind of thing with your arms and move the chain to lower yourself down. But it might be easier that there's just like a lever that you shoot, and then some cogs grind, and then you sort of lurch and start slowly dropping down.
Yeah, I prefer the second. We don't want to introduce new gameplay elements
No, yeah.
just to support this one level.
And as you go down, the idea is that there'll be eventually I'll probably carve some little almost like not wormholes, but manholes out of the side of that chasm, so that as you're going down into the darkness you can see maybe some eyes in a little hole, and then they kind of start, like Ben was saying, maybe you have it that you can see the eyes, and that gives you enough warning to get ready to shoot, and then there might be a bit of a noise or a groan, and then you
leap it.
After a while you figure out the timing that after 2 or 3 seconds they leap at you from the darkness, so and maybe they grab onto the side of the cart, or they jump into the cart with you, or you've got to shoot them before they get to the cart. So, and again, that might come down to gun choice. If you got the pistol, it might be that you need the crossbow, which has got more impact and actually sort of throws them back in midair, like you always see in a western. Shoot the guy with the shotgun and it knocks him backwards.
The yawning has started early.
Yes, no, that's happened to me too. So it's definitely the post-lunch snoozies.
That's not the post-lunch snoozies, it's this part of the room. Every single time, any time of the day.
Okay.
The PLS.
Yeah. No, that thing about that shotgun blowing you back, I mean, it's a great effect in the movies, but of course, why doesn't it blow back the guy that's holding the shotgun?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he get blown across the room too, if it's that powerful?
Yeah.
Right, action and reaction have to be equal and opposite, so If this guy's going to get blown over, this guy should get blown over.
Oh yeah. If it's strong enough to knock him back, yeah, it should knock you flat on your ass.
Yeah. Especially when you see them get blown through a window or something bizarre like that. You think, okay, that's good, but you would have just ripped off your own shoulder.
I think how much longer is left in this video. Probably not much longer because I just had the chains. I was basically playing around here with the positioning of the character and the chains, and I can't actually tell whether I've got any chains added there yet. Oh yeah. So here I'm looking at how some of the existing chain assets that we have got, and I realise those ones will do quite nicely.
Mm-hmm. But we do need a way to have a fairly endless run of them, or for them to disappear in the distance, I guess.
To have what? Sorry,
those chains, because you're going to be going down a long shaft, and you can look up at any time.
Yeah. It will probably just have to be a very long asset, or take one of them and stack it up into 10 of them and group them.
Yeah.
There is actually a couple of long chain assets there, but I think, oh no, there were ropes, very long ropes. And here is you can see I've taken it into Maya and I'm just cutting out, that was a brazier, so I just got rid of the brazier and probably re-export it in a way that I can bring it back into Unreal as an FBX. Right. Which gives something that should work reasonably well to attach to the side of that container.
Okay. You seem to be designing that chain in a school playground somewhere. That's what it looked like. There was a building behind, an outdoor scene.
Don't know what that was.
I guess it's too dark in the game to do much designing.
Yeah, well actually I've got the scene lit here, but normally when you're doing this stuff you tend to turn off the lighting so you can actually see better.
Oh, okay.
So just up
It's ironic. Ironic? What did I just say? Ironic.
Ironic.
Fuck.
Yeah, you're making up words now.
I am making up words.
Is that Russian?
I will prove to you that Russian is not so far from English.
Okay.
The next time I see the relevant 12-year-old, I will...
Relevant 12-year-old?
Yes.
now.
All will become clear.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of playing around with different chains.
Okay, yeah, you see what I mean? There's a building in the background. It looks like it could be a...
Oh, and the asset viewer, yeah, I know what you mean now. Yeah. So this bit here, I'm probably checking out materials. Yeah. So that's a metal material that we had for another asset, and I'm looking for an interesting metal material to apply to that chain.
Oh dear, I'm yawning again.
Yes, and the aircon is on.
It is on. Aircon's on.
Definitely kicked in.
Cold air. Just no oxygen, maybe. I don't know. Because the aircon doesn't necessarily bring in the oxygen, does it? The oxygen's actually got to get in here somehow.
Well, I don't yawn in any other part of the room.
There's a big heater up there that's supposed to bring in oxygen in winter.
So let's see what's happening here. I think this level will probably be quite an interesting one to play when it's all tied together.
I'm looking forward to it. It should definitely be one of our levels that we send away for approval by console manufacturers.
I think probably this one and the ramp, maybe that niches one.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to send through, for that starter one, individual levels or actual cave systems like a string of levels, probably just individual levels, eh?
Yeah.
I was thinking what you could do is do a little focus group. Get a couple of guinea pigs from down the hallway, someone who hasn't seen any of it yet, like Nadia and someone else or something like that, and play them through each level and get them to give each level a score out of 10. And then between the 2 or 3 people that you get to do it to, get like an average of which are the highest scoring.
Okay.
Like satisfaction
No, that's
ratings
a really good idea.
of each level. And that will give, because the problem with me choosing them is I, having worked on them, may have already...
Affections for something.
Yeah, like slanted likes, dislikes for each area. So you want ideally a couple of people who haven't played through any of the VR experience at all. Yeah, there you go. I'm adding the skeletons into the bottom of it. And the video stopped. Oh no. That stopped on that screen. No. Right, this is cut over to the second video now, I think.
Okay.
So this is kind of the second half of concepting the crossbow stuff.
So we're not spending the whole day on, or the whole stream on that cave?
It's split up. I think that one was probably getting we'd done our dash.
Alright, so what we're looking at now is...
The crossbow I'd already sort of concepted on the main image there. And it had gone to Sergi, who had done an initial block in, so what I'm doing there is cutting out, I got him to send me his renders of what he already had, and there's some stuff that I know is wrong and needs changing for a variety of reasons, but there's specifically the back half of the concept I wanted to change, and there's a few things like...
Removing the cock.
Yeah, he's removing... Sergi with his pronunciation of the words cock and cog and so on.
Apparently very little difference in Spanish between cock and cog.
Very
yesterday our confusion over what was...
So you can see here I'm actually doing a bit of experimental stuff where I'm just grabbing random shapes and experimenting.
Was that what was going on?
Yeah. That was like a gas mask, and I was interested in the shape on the front because it was almost like a vent.
Yeah.
So what's eventually going to happen with this crossbow is we want it in the final game ready version. It should be that because it's automatic, it'll feed the next bolt and the string will come back, and there should be a gas canister back next to your chest that it will vent a little bit of gas when it gets to pressure.
It should actually be a
fire, you know.
It should actually be steam powered.
Yeah, well that's the idea.
But the source of the heat for making the steam is always the tricky thing.
Yeah.
Now, I can show you a design we had years ago for a steam-powered hammer.
Steam hammer.
Yeah, but it was quite intriguing, and it does have a little glow for obviously some sort of heat source that was making the steam.
So I've probably I haven't done it yet. I have a plan to change the back end of the stock, but I got distracted and was like, right, let's sort out this engraving. So to make Sergi's life easier, when he goes to model it, he ideally would like something like this. I mean, it's not a must, but it just makes his life easier if he's got a little cutout that shows exactly in high clarity what this engraving looks like. Because on the concept sketch, the main crossbow image, it's a little bit vague, it's a little bit airy-fairy and swirly, and it could really be anything when you get down to the nitty-gritty. So you can see me going into the original model, original concept there and sampling out pieces like the screws, and then copying and paste them over a new layer and scaling it up, and just making some cutouts that really define how these things look. And there's usually, on a concept orthographic like this, there's usually 2 or 3 little areas that the modeler will come back to you and go, what's this? A good example I can show you in a little while is the little sort of like brass tubes up above the trigger area. Because it's such a small area with little tubes going everywhere, it's something that quite often is hard to get just right. So in this case I'm going in and really sculpting it out and trying to get the shape down so when he models it, it's clear.
Well, that's, I think one thing, it really speeds things up when people work with really good concept art, when the modelers actually get to work with really good concept art.
Yeah, and at this stage as well, you got to, as a concept artist, you got to be thinking, right, how can I make the modeler's life easy? It's not necessarily all about making a cool image that you like, or that helps, but it definitely is a secondary benefit if you can make it easy for them to model and clear. And I guess as a 2D guy, it's much quicker for me to flesh out this engraving piece on the top than it would be for Sergi. He could still do it, but he just probably wouldn't be quite as quick as me.
Yep.
So it's just so these aren't super detailed, these little screw heads, but they're enough that at a distance, I mean, it's one thing that looking at it now, maybe later I'll have to go and polish a little bit, the screw heads possibly, but it depends how it looks on the model.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, I guess with the case of the crossbow, what I had in mind is that the very top of it has got this engraving, and realistically when you're holding something like a gun or a crossbow like that inside the game, what are you going to see most? Well, if you look down in VR, you're going to see the top of it.
Yeah.
So that was where we wanted.
Top and back, basically.
Yeah. Most of your detail should be right in front of your eyes where you're going to see it. There's no point putting beautiful detail on the bottom of it, because I don't think we're going to be doing any animation that involves seeing the other side of it, really.
No. No, we'll do as much as we need to do, and no more.
So I played around with this engraving. You can see me at the moment toggling on and off a layer that has got some engraving on it that is on a blend mode. So I'm playing around and trying to get, because like when you have a piece of metal in front of you, it's brand new metal is highly reflective and specular and has light bounces off it, whereas older metal gets dull, it gets scratches. So it's kind of trying to find that sweet spot where the engraving looks real.
Because the old metal still has a bit of a glow, doesn't it?
Yeah, metal's a hard one, especially as it gets aged, because it's still reflective.
Yeah.
It still looks like metal, but it gets a little bit duller in places, and there might be scratches, and all this stuff goes on. So that's, I think eventually you'll see what I ended up deciding to do is make a couple of versions of it, one without the engraving and one with the engraving, so that when Sergi models it, he can choose either or it might be that he actually puts both on and turns one into like a blend mode where it's like a colour dodge or a multiply layer and gets an interesting look out of it.
So a lot of your job as a concept artist is to be really, really observant, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. It's probably the best description of good concept artists should be just hyper observant. Like to the point where, I don't know, I mean I always think of it as looking at clouds. If you were that kid that would lie on his back on the grass staring at clouds, and while everyone else is seeing a sheep you can see a unicorn, then you probably could be a good concept artist. It's just being able to see stuff but being observant.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's seeing stuff that isn't there, if you know what I mean. Like looking at a cloud is a great example, because a cloud could really be anything to any one person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes when you do concept art, my art style when I'm doing environment stuff is you just throw down random shapes on the canvas and move them around, and as you're moving them you might suddenly see an interesting shape form together, and that's enough to kind of spark off an idea.
Okay.
It's kind of a hard process to teach someone who hasn't got the right brain patterns to do it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. And then so the other part of that is observing what is there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what does metal look like? What do different kinds of metal look like in different stages of
Yeah, and I always remember
decay?
a few years back I went to one of those, there was a a conference in Wellington, not a conference, it was like a little training thing done by Paul Tobin out of Weta. A 2-day training thing. And they did quite a good rundown of kind of what you're talking about with being observant. And it's the little stuff like, his example there, we're in a room like this, and in the middle of the room was a pillar. And to a common person, if you said, what colour's the pillar? They'd say, whatever the colour this wall is, beigey, whitey, or whatever. But when you actually were observant and looked up close, near the edges of the pillar were almost white because you're getting bounced light off of the fluorescent lighting in the room.
Yep.
Near the middle of the pillar was much darker than just a third of the way in. So it's being hyper observant to the point where you realise, okay, the colour gradient across a simple flat pillar changed from edge to middle and back to edge again.
Yeah.
And both edges went the same. One was bright white and it's just about light sources.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, fascinating.
Okay. So what are we up to now? It was fascinating watching you actually apply pieces to this to make it different.
Yeah, you would have seen those little notches down the side, like little quarter circles or whatever that I ran down the side. I was looking at the original rendering above and realised that this engraved piece on top of, if the engraved metal panel was just rectangular, it might be a little bit boring. So when you look at old, I guess the idea is this is sort of steampunky and a little bit old, so you don't want it to feel modern. And when they did old metal, it was tended to be done by like a blacksmith or something, so it's not like modern metal that's perfectly cut, and they might be little nicks or quite often they would do little scalloped edges and things like that.
Yeah.
Much the same as those prongs on the front of the crossbows. See how they're made to look like, what do they call it? Wrought iron gate, when you twist the metal.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's kind of swirled and twisted.
So Sergi thought that was for stabbing people yesterday.
Yeah, defensive. It's actually lowered down on like a 30-degree incline, those prongs.
Yeah.
So the bolt can actually get out just above it. But
so we thought either to stab people in the eyes, or potentially a taser.
Yep. You could electrify it. That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that.
I love it.
In 1836.
Yeah, that would be mean actually if you had a little button on the side.
Wouldn't it?
Taser them.
In 1836.
Yeah.
Well, we have an electric organ.
Well, we have a Tesla-powered organ.
Whatever. Why can this not be a Tesla-powered? Come on.
And at the moment, I
just feel like tasers are pushing it.
It's all pushing it.
You've still got to maintain that willing suspension of disbelief.
I'd believe it. We've got all sorts of stuff in there that doesn't really make too much sense if you really pay attention.
Well, some of it's definitely steampunk, but
actually, and now on Photoshop you can see I'm just playing around with Sergi's base renders, which I think I would have desaturated it and then played around with the levels to get them to kind of a baseline, and I could have just drawn these from scratch, but as we already had the model mostly blocked in, it made sense just to grab those and use them as a base.
Yeah.
A message from Iteration. Hey folks. Hello.
Hello, Iteration. Is that what it says?
Yes,
it is.
That's what I just said.
I really need to have it up here on my...
You're asleep. That's the problem.
Okay.
I can't remember where this video stops either.
I know who Iteration is. How's Wellington, Iteration?
Anyway, as we
take
were.
him a while to respond to that.
The video there stopped. Oh, that one's the one on that screen's got a time delay, hasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Over that one.
So it will stop here shortly as well.
I suspect that's where I went to lunch, because that one's kind of...
Okay, well, it's a beautiful model to look at a lunch break. So these people, these things that go on top, those metal strips.
The ones, the engraved bit,
Yeah,
you mean, or the prongs?
The detailing bit. So where did you come up with the detailing for that? Was that just...
It was a combination of a couple of textures. So I did the actual engraving. I did a Google image search for. I think I searched for gangster's pistol. You know how all the drug lords in Colombia like to have fancy pistols made of gold with engraving all over them.
Yep.
I did not know that. But now
that's what they love their pistols over there. So I went searching for that anyway, and I found like a revolver where the guy, I think he actually had some Mexican saying engraved on the side, but right in the middle was this nice piece of engraving. So I started with that, and I would have just flipped it to a multiply layer and played around with levels and erased pieces out of it.
Okay.
So basically using that, if you could zoom in, that engraving, and then...
Can we zoom in?
Don't know if you can in the Twitch feed, but the piece we're talking about is the bottom left below the crossbow, the engraved panel. So for a simple little metal panel, there's quite a bit going on. There's a little bit of texture manipulation. There's on the version on the left where there's no engraving, there's a little bit of, on the bottom end of it you can see how it's darker. So I've gone in and I've just painted in with a sort of almost like a chalk brush, some multiply layer just to make it look a bit dirty or worn.
Yeah. Alright, well I don't seem to be able to zoom it for you, so...
No, that's right.
Yeah. So that looks...
When I do get back from the lunch break, you'll probably see the next thing I do is the 3 orthographic views, the top, side and front, starting to polish those out. I can't remember if it was on this video. But before that I had to... The big job was to sort out the back end of the stock and figure out just how the gas bottle would connect to the trigger area. And also from talking to Sergi, the problem with the main view, while it looks good, there's stuff you can't see, like in that image you can't quite see where the trigger is or quite what shape it is and things like that. So that's where the side on and the top view come in pretty handy.
So one of the I guess you'll find this out when you
so here you go. The stock, you can see I had a stock photo of a
stock photo
of the stock
of a random gun. But I probably spent 5 minutes looking at various gun types because I was looking specifically for a stock that would work for what I had in mind. So it wasn't just the first one I'd seen. So you can see I'm getting rid of the existing stuff using the lasso tool, and I use masks a lot. So you can see on the right there's a little, they probably can't see it on that screen, but there's a little black box next to the layer so you can mask it out, and I'm warping that texture to use, and then I'll start painting in over the top. And I already know at this stage that I'll be putting like a gas bottle on the top half of the stock, because the problem with the original concept was that you wouldn't really see much of it with the gas bottle on the top. The idea is as you're holding it, it would be there. So if you did look down in VR, it's right here, and it'll be a bit more impactful if you're playing and then there's steam starts coming out of this thing down just below your head.
Okay. Just heard from Iteration that our stream keeps cutting out, even though we're not getting any pausing here today. That's a bit annoying.
Well, someone else said that as well.
We might have to point that out to our bandwidth provider, our internet provider. That's not good enough. We're supposed to be on fibre, faster speed. Yeah. No, what I was going to say before was the you're talking about that Mexican gun and having a Mexican saying on the side of that gun. When you actually get to work on the rifle, which was designed years ago for the trailer, I think, that actually has Vae Victis on the side, which is
Vae Victis.
Vae Victis was from I think Legacy of Kain
Oh, yeah.
It was the vampire thing, wasn't it? And it was one of the things he used to say as he wandered around, Vae Victus, which meant woe to the conquered or something. I couldn't tell you for sure. I know stuff that I've heard about it, but that was actually carved on the side of that, and I'm just wondering if we should put little Easter eggs like that on our.
Well, could do. I was originally contemplating, and where the engraving is, in the middle of it, having a word like Bessie or Betsy or whatever. You know, people name their guns.
Yeah.
Like naming the trucks.
But when I surveyed the boys and said, if you had a crossbow, would you call it Bessie? They all looked at me like I was insane. So
yeah.
So I was like, okay, we'll leave that for now.
But on the other hand, if you'd said, do you want Vae Victus on the side? Yes, that'd probably go.
Yeah.
Or some other thing from a game.
So you can see here, I'm just starting to flesh out, now that I've got a clearer idea of how the stock would look. I already know that that back bit's going to be a gas bottle, just below that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting rid of those metal strips and going to paint in the trigger there. I'm just starting to noodle with it.
I like the way you noodle with stuff.
Noodle. And I'm just starting to add like copper wires, just grabbing some sort of colour sample.
Copper tube.
Yeah. Colour sampling off the other coppery bits on the gun and just painting in little tubes and figuring out. Because you kind of do have to almost have a mechanical mindset when you're doing something like this, because quite often you'll see a rendering that someone's done of something where they haven't fully thought through how mechanically it would work.
Yeah.
Like, is that copper just hanging there, or is it maybe it needs to be attached with some kind of like a U-bolt or some other kind of fixture. So in the end, I went with the idea that the top side of the stock has got like a channel carved out of it, and that's where the gas bottle's sitting. So it's almost like someone's taken a normal stock and carved out a big recess for the bottle and a little recess for the copper tubing.
Okay.
And then the tubing will split off and go to a couple of points down near the pistol. The trigger.
Okay. So
It's paused again. I think I've
gone to afternoon tea now.
I know, I'm away. Right. Here you can see I've brought in a photo reference. Now this one isn't being directly used, it's just there for visual reference. So I would have found something like a pressure cylinder or something online to look at how the light's bouncing off it and what it looks like.
Yep.
And I've just lassoed some of the base image and playing with the levels and saturation, and it instantly breaks that piece that was a part of the stock, because now it looks something like totally different.
Yep.
And I'll probably go in and make another layer and paint some colour in there and sample the yellows out of that example image.
Yeah, so this started off, I guess the inspiration was probably a crossbow close to the one used in Van Helsing.
Yeah, and that's another probably big reason that I was changing the stock, because it was too close to the one on Van Helsing, and while it's good to draw inspiration, you've got to be really wary of
you don't want to
just
copy
ripping
anything.
stuff off. So
you really want to make your own thing, but
but
you can't afford to ignore good ideas either. And
well,
the Van Helsing one was certainly a fascinating crossbow,
especially when the reason we ended up going for an automatic crossbow was, I guess you could call it laziness. Because if you make an individual loading crossbow, it creates in-game problems, because then we've got to
animate
the whole thing. You've got to have a well-modelled bolt, you've got to have a well-modelled hands, and all the animations of loading it and putting it in there and pulling it back. Whereas with auto, you just have to lift it up and pull the trigger, and it's I guess worst case you might have an animation where you put another cartridge in from the bottom.
We probably won't do that because we're controlling the number of arrows they have, so they'll always have whatever we're going to stick them with. Yeah, I mean for level 12 it might be you only have 15 bolts, but that's all you need, and once you're out, and as far as anybody knows, that's a 50 bolt.
It's really interesting, isn't it? When you're actually playing a game, it's you're not necessarily aware of all the tiny decisions that go into the making of it.
Oh yeah.
I think that should be what's fascinating about this stream, is getting to find out about some of those weird decisions that are actually made about the game
And why?
before you actually got there, and why they're
And
made.
in some cases, that's a good example of something where the form of that crossbow was partially dictated by how we wanted it to work in the game.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we may have never done a drum-driven cartridge on it. It might have been a self-loader, but it just made sense.
Might have had an ammo belt.
Yeah, I did actually suggest that an ammo belt of
Crossbow bolts.
bolts. Yeah, ammo belt of bolts.
That could have been true.
A bolt belt.
Where did we draw inspiration to put for the cock at the end of the bow?
Oh dear.
No?
So what? Which one?
I was actually talking about the pulley at the end of the
cog.
The cog,
yeah. When you look at a lot of what are they called, compound bows? Modern compound bows have basically they'll have a pulley, and the string goes around it.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because they tend to have a couple of sets of pulleys, so that you're actually pulling a. What it's doing is actually reducing the amount of pull you have for the amount of pressure it's going to have on release. So a 60-pound compound bow might actually only take 25 pounds to actually pull it, all the way out. Feels like 60 once you're holding it though, when you've got to wait for your shot.
60's quite a lot.
Yeah. And 60 on a recurve would be killer. That, muscles like this, pulling that thing all day.
And this bit here, I believe what I was doing, I was talking to Sergi, and we were just talking about materials, and it dawned on me that this prong at the front was possibly a bit too bright. So I've gone in and just sort of painted a multiply layer over it, and now I'm just probably masking out parts of that layer to
bit of corrosion,
leave like highlights and nicks and scratches. It just slightly darkens that prong.
I very much want that to be a taser.
And then I'm going in to start working up the side views and so on.
If it was a taser, it would be shorted out already because those two prongs actually come from the same point. You need current to flow between them.
That can be done.
It's not semantics, it's physics.
No, fuck the physics. We can change it.
If we can change physics.
Oh God. Okay, that's pedantic.
Okay.
We can change the design.
True,
As it happens,
true.
we have artists and modelers.
So
Just so
some
happens.
ceramic insulator between the two prongs.
Exactly. See, now there you're thinking.
No, don't do that, Lincoln.
Ceramics.
I think we just poke people with the prongs.
Oh, come
It keeps them away.
on.
Stay away from my pointy bits.
Oh, stay away from my cock.
And there you can see what I've done is I'm copying the main image, making a small version, just so that I've got. Otherwise, on a big image like this, you end up just kind of scrolling back and forth over the screen. So this is just a little version that I can use down close, and I don't have to keep going back to the big image.
Yeah.
And I'm just quickly
Locking that into.
And a quick way to do these is, like I've done there, I've got a small version of the main image, is I can then just lasso and copy little sections of it, like I just copied the cartridge, pasted it onto the side view and then overpainted it, and it means that the colour palette and all that kind of stuff that you've used on the main image is reflected in the profile views.
Maintaining consistency then.
Yeah.
Right, I hadn't considered that, but you can do that for much of the weapon, can't you? Just copy and paste.
Yeah. Obviously the perspective's different, so like that's a good example. Here again, I've just copied part of the existing cylinder, pasted it in there, and then I've just started painting the bits that I don't have. And I would have probably had to warp it and play around with it, because in the perspective view it'll be, 3/4 perspective, whatever, where the little rivet lines and so on that go around the cylinder won't be perfectly vertical, they'll be curved. So the key thing, I guess, for the side view is, I mean, what's the purpose of it? Really, the main purpose is so the modeler has something to refer to. So it doesn't need to be super detailed, but you're just trying to, any little areas that may confuse them, like the trigger, for example, he just needs to see it from the side and get an idea of just what shape it is. Especially those little copper lines coming from the gas bottle, he's going to want to know, okay, you know, what angle they're coming out at and things like that. So eventually you'll probably see me that I go in and I have to sort of paint little lines to suggest where those copper lines are going. And materials, anything like, obviously that front stock is wooden, so I've just probably done a colour blend
Wake up.
Thank you.
of some brown sort of stuff over there.
You can't reciprocate, by the way.
No. No, not good for my reputation beating a woman on on a Twitch stream.
Not good for you. Not good for your health.
Probably not. Oh, and that really hurts, so that's likely to keep me awake for a little while.
Good.
Did you get them in there?
No, I should have
You
done.
did
Just
the knuckle
cork them
right
up.
in there.
Yeah.
And what
Next
am I doing
time.
now?
We've taken out the front view of it.
I've moved, I played around a bit with composition. I mean, normally you'd do 4 views. You do a top, side, back and front, I guess. In this case, because screen real estate, it was starting to get a bit busy, so I chopped it down. I was like, oh, maybe I'll just do a side and a top. But I think later on I realised that I needed a couple more elements in there.
Okay.
In this case, you're probably not going to get a lot of value out of a front-on view, because what are you going to see? Just, you know.
Well, you can see those metal strips for a start, because you've actually got some layers at the front there. So typical of a bow that you might see in somebody's car suspension or whatever.
Yeah.
You've actually got leaves, individual leaves of material there that assist with the stretching.
Yeah,
So
I guess normally you would put it in there, but in this case, it's a little bit back to front, probably because I wasn't there because I don't work on Mondays, and I was away on Tuesday. Sergi had already started modelling this crossbow off the perspective view without having the orthographics yet.
Yeah.
So I was kind of chasing along behind a bit, going, I'll quickly do these orthographics so it'll sort out any questions you've got. Like he already said, he knew he couldn't see the trigger, and there were some other little material questions. So I said, I'll whip up these side views. And because he already had the model, I'd looked at his model and it all looked good and in proportion. So he didn't really need the front view, and now starting again, sampling bits out of my main image and pasting them and then overpainting them to try and get the scale and stuff right for the top view.
it's not that I'm bored. It really is this terrible place.
I can't. You're on Twitch. This is not only live but being recorded.
Yeah.
And you've been asleep 3 times, maybe.
Man, I should do this bloody stream at 3 a.m. I can never fall asleep at 3 a.m. Right? So this is when I should stream. Probably be better for the US as well.
Yeah, you'll be on your own.
Well, you're assuming. I
Depends
wouldn't
what
have
you
to
wanna-
be on my own at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Well, no, you wouldn't, but you might want to be on a different channel.
Very likely. But
What was that time? Ooh.
yeah, you're coming up close to the end, so. And what's the bet? I won't feel like snoozing at all once I get back over there to my desk, where the windows are. All right,
Better than average.
so we're nearly done here.
I mean, the rest is much the same. process for that top view is the side. It's just sampling bits. I probably will grab my templates on the left of the engraving, duplicate it, and put a copy on top of that. You know, that upper spar where it's got the engraving on it. There wasn't that much in this view that needed to be ironed out. The main queries that Sergi had was about those little brass tubes at the back and the trigger.
Yeah.
And really that's the main goal of this image, is more than anything, is to make sure that any design stuff is making sense to the 3D modeler.
So you've actually made the bow material much thinner than I remember on Sergi's model.
I think the actual bow part does get fattened up. I still need to change that.
Ah, okay. So that actually happens later.
Because, like you said, it is composite. It's kind of got, I guess the analogy to leaf springs is perfect. It should be a bit thicker, the bow closer to the centre.
Let's try and get through to where we can see it again.
Oh man, that is so not good for my brains.
Yeah, I know. It's confusing me.
Oh dear. Brook,
Yep.
this isn't fun.
But yeah, so looking top down, you can see how thin the actual bow is compared to what it looks like in that image there. But also, when we were looking at Sergi's model yesterday, those things actually had a thickness. He'd had to extrude them a bit, and they really did look like sort of leaf springs and
yeah, that's the way it should be, because they should look like exactly like that. It gives that feeling like they're not. Almost like someone's taken it out of an old car and they've just retrofitted it.
Yeah.
We're so done.
All right, well, that's our stream done for the day. Thank you very much, Lincoln, for talking us through both the development of the deep cave, which is going to be, the level one of two levels I'm looking forward to playing.
Only 2 out of 60.
Well, there's 2 that I'm really fascinated with. One is actually travelling down that deep shaft, because there's nowhere else in the game where you travel. And the other one is the Umami cave, where we've got the sniffer zombies, because I think that's going to be fantastic to actually work out your strategy there. I really like the idea of the strategic levels. Anyway, so we'll be back again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Or 3 a.m. maybe, if I want to stay awake for it. To continue the streaming of the development of our game after the light. So I'm Brook, Margaret and Lincoln here from Stickmen Media, and we'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.
Ciao.